Welcome back to our joint venture between Huntersville United Methodist Church. I choked up when I said Huntersville United Methodist Church. You just bring the emotion to the forefront for me. Huntersville United Methodist Church, Denver United Methodist Church. Friend Paul Thompson and Steve Autrey here. We have the privilege of being the leadership of those churches as pastors.
I'm sure that just sent a shudder down the spine of everybody we're listening to.
Probably they're like, oh, you guys. So, thank you for coming back. If you're new to this, thank you for joining us. We would ask simply if this means something to you, maybe share it with someone. And because we need more airtime.
Yeah, all 5 people who are watching are just thrilled.
Thrilled. But we're a little giddy because it's the time of year when pastors and church staff are, we're doing a lot. And there's so hidden into Christmas Eve, we get a little loopy. And so if you see that in us today, just know it's because, we've consumed too much sugar. We've had too many year-end meetings. We are planning too many services, and we got a lot going on, people. So just that's why we're a little crazy.
Yeah.
But,
We'll use that as an excuse.
He can't even talk right now. He's got so much going on. So it is. This is the podcast for December 21st, longest day of the year.
Yeah.
No, shortest day of the year.
Shortest.
It feels like the longest to me because the darkness just kind of settles in. Yeah. And maybe you feel that a little bit. I know that I'm longing for more sunshine. And part of celebrating Christmas at this time of year in the northern hemisphere anyway is the power of talking about the light that shines in the darkness, because it is that time of year where we experience so much darkness physically. It's also a time, as we talked previously, where a lot of people experience emotional darkness with grief and some despair. And so it becomes ever more important to talk about this idea that Jesus is the light that shines in the darkness. And it's a light that shines in such a way that it draws people from outside the bounds of the Jewish faith to come and seek Christ. And we see that in the story of the wise men. We're going to talk a little bit about that today.
So that story is only in the Gospel according to Matthew, and it is a fascinating story. One of the things we know about stars is that stars have their fixed position in the sky, and sailors navigate often, are used to, especially by the Northern Star and stars.
Fixed point of reference.
And for centuries, people have looked to the stars for messages from God. And so when we turn to this Gospel of Matthew and this rather interesting story about some wise men, we call them magi, and to understand the nature of that, you have to really think about different cultures. Mm-hmm. And so these wise men, we call them, would have been from a distant land, and they would have been studying the stars for a message from God.
So they're also known as magi. What is the meaning of that?
So the meaning of magi is that they are people who are astrologers, in essence. They are people who...
Notice that he said astrologers, not astronomers.
Right. Astrologers.
There's a difference.
Right. The astrologers literally are studying the skies for the messages, not necessarily, discovering more planets or more stars, but they're actually looking for messages from the stars.
And if you want a hint of what that looked like, horoscopes. Right?
Yeah.
People, like, I was born under this sign, therefore I have this personality.
Yeah, I'm a Taurus. So
am I.
Yeah. That's a little scary.
It is.
We're both Taurus.
Yeah.
So these
right.
astrologers would have
Always.
been studying the sky, and there was this star that appears, we believe, at Jesus' birth. As a matter of fact, I think someone said recently, maybe it was you, that it was going to be around this same week, a star that has not appeared in 400 years. We're going to see it. It's an interesting occurrence. Only happens every few hundred years.
I didn't say that because that's well beyond my pay grade.
But
that's kind of cool that we know a lot about the stars in our modern world, and yet the more we learn about them, it's kind of like the less we know. I can imagine first century, they don't have the same understanding that we do scientifically, but they're looking up there going, there's something special about those heavenly bodies.
And so what would have happened for these people who study the stars, they likely would have seen the star at Jesus' birth, and it would have set off a series of travel for them.
Right, and you've got to imagine that this doesn't happen, right? And there is generational knowledge here in this class of people, and they would have gone back and consulted whatever documents they had and said, this is something different, this is something new. And it appears that this phenomenon is leading us somewhere. We have to go see what this is.
And so we can conjecture based on what people who study such things, that it might have taken them as much as 2 years to arrive at that space. Right.
So we in our understanding of Christmas cards and manger scenes, we always cram everything together. We put the wise men come in, the Christmas play right after the shepherds, and they're all together there at the manger. That's not how it really worked. The Magi, the wise men, traveled from afar. And if we wanted to do our manger scenes to be on the right timeline, we could have the manger scene with the shepherds and the angels, and then we could put the shepherds over above the wise men over above the fireplace or something, because they were quite a ways away.
And then we find out, of course, they make the trek, they search information, they research. This means that there's a new king born to this land that we would know as Israel today. And so the significance of that would have been discovered over time as they make the trek. And then, fascinatingly enough, we're told what gifts they bring to this newborn king, and they are, as we all know, frankincense, gold, and myrrh, which is so fascinating because if they had done their research, these magi, they would have found that those were, indeed, in the Old Testament, those were the gifts that people did bring kings. They didn't just make it up. It would have been something they would have found in the Hebrew Scriptures.
And maybe you've heard the jokes. You can tell that they were men who showed up because they didn't bring anything of practical value for a newborn.
no diapers or none of that.
Or a toddler, right?
Yeah,
They show up with something that in some aspects is kind of useless, but actually, I believe, ended up being of immense importance to the Holy Family.
Well, certainly people have conjectured that the gold would have been a way for them to have, because in Matthew's gospel, they then escape and they have to leave.
The arrival of the wise men triggers a series of events. Let me just read the story of the wise men coming.
Please do.
So this is Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chest, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road.
So this story, we try to fit neatly into that same Christmas narrative as Luke does, but it doesn't fit neatly there. But it's important, I think, that we recognize the significance that the gospel message is reaching first to pagan people, astrologers from probably the same area, Iran, Iraq of today. It would have been a distant land.
Right. So the irony in this is pretty significant, that those who were anticipating the birth of the Messiah, the temple leaders, the priests, even the zealots who were longing for a Messiah, they all missed the sign. But those who are outside the bounds of Israel, outside the bounds of the covenant, outside the dictates of the law of Moses, they see it.
And they respond.
So tomorrow we'll talk a little more in depth about how we understand this story and why Matthew tells this story when nobody else does. So look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you for being with us today, and God bless you all.
We'll see you tomorrow.